where should you be putting your money if you want to begin investing today? Now, I obviously can't answer that question for you, but you can. And by the end of this video, not only will you have answered that question, you'll know how to act upon it. So let's get into it. Welcome back, and welcome back to me as well. I guess it has been far too long. So today I want to be talking about 5 absolutely key and fundamental questions that I ask myself and that you need to be asking yourself every time you do something with your money. And by answering just these 5 questions, you'll honestly know where and how to invest to achieve your goals in the most efficient way possible. And this sort of framework is something that has really helped me. And as I've said before, investing should not be your priority if you have any short-term debt. Get that cleared first, and do have some sort of cash savings account that you can fall back on for any unexpected changes in your income or outgoings. So each question today feeds into the next, so do watch the whole video in order, and we'll go along by giving 2 examples of how I've answered these questions personally, and therefore what I've invested in order to achieve certain financial goals of mine in the future. But if you are in the position of being able to invest something each month, then bear in mind that these are my goals, my strategy, backed up by my rationale. So that's going to differ to yours. And don't do something because someone on the internet, aka me, tells you to do something. But let's start with the first building block in question 1. What are you investing for and why? So this is the most fundamental question, and you have to have a clearly defined goal and aim in any activity you're doing, not just financial. So if you want to say, I want to lose or gain weight, that is far too vague. It's unlikely going to happen, as you need to pin down exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to achieve that weight loss. £1 a week, for example, by eating in a calorie deficit of 200 calories. The exact same thing goes for finances. If you just come up with an idea, I want to improve my financial position, what is it and what do you want to improve on? How are you going to do that, and why are you doing it? By having a clearly defined strategy, when things are going wrong or not as well as you might have hoped, you either know you're on the right path and just need to keep going, or you can identify where and how you've gone wrong. Now that is all very vague, but let me get into 2 of my financial goals to give you a better understanding of what I mean. So they're very simple and literally 1 or 2 sentences. I want to grow the purchasing power of my savings through profiting off global capitalism and humans' ability to generate greater value over time in order to be financially independent, and most importantly, freedom over my time. I have a number in mind for this goal, but I'll expand on that in just a second. But another financial goal of mine is to own a home, and the financial and emotional security that will bring me. So therefore, I need to get a deposit of about 10%. So I'm looking at about £30,000 there if I'm looking at a 300k home. So this economic growth, which we can see, is measured simply by the change in the total value of stuff being produced in an economy. And that's measured through a thing called GDP. And who is making all these things of value? It's companies. And today in 2022, we can literally buy a global index of companies around the world making these things in about 10 clicks. So if economies around the world are growing, that simply means the total value of stuff being sold by companies is increasing. And we can all be a part and own a part of that continuous innovation and growth. Obviously, there's going to be times when there's a drop in the value of things like a virus. We're all locked up in our homes, not going to the pub. So the total amount of beer obviously drops. There are going to be times when people are overly optimistic about making short-term gains in the market. There's always going to be a certain degree of irrationality in stock markets, as it's just a tool for perceived value. Perceptions aren't going to be 100% accurate, but they're a good guide. But over this amazing and successful period of human history, there's been hundreds of reasons to believe humanity is going to fail, including world wars, nuclear threats, pandemics, everything you can think of. But going forward, I'm hugely optimistic that if I buy a piece of the world's producers today, in 30 or 40 years' time, that's going to be worth a hell of a lot more, irrespective of whether those companies are cheap or relatively expensive today. Because I think humans are pretty good at making things better in the long run. Now, of course, I'm not saying life is easy today. I just want to talk about the realities of investing today and the opportunities that we all have in front of us. Obviously, there is much more to life than average income growth or GDP growth. I'm not talking about living standards. I'm just talking about the realities of investing today. Question 2 is very important. How long for or when will you want to access the money you're investing. So for example, my ISA, which has the goal of financial freedom, goal 1, this is upwards of 25 years for me because I need that length to build up funds in order to live off. But this time frame means my ability to sustain losses in the short term is far greater than if I need to access money in a few years because I have time for it to recover in that time frame. Whilst the funds in my lifetime ISA are going to be needed much sooner, hopefully within the next 5 or 7 years. So therefore, my ability to sustain a downturn is far less. So the answer to the time frame doesn't need that much going into it. Simply what and when you need your money. And that determines the answer to question 3. What level of risk are you willing to take? So stocks have given a very good return over time, and that's because they do entail risk, especially in the short term. So for over 1 year periods, there is a 2 in 3 chance you have a negative return. It's not free money in the stock market. You cannot park your money in stocks, even a large basket of them, over a few years in the hope of making a quick buck, because there is more than a significant chance that you will not see positive returns. So while global indexes have returned approximately 6% over a long period of time, you cannot expect to make those on an average year. It's just not how it works. You'll have years when returns are much greater than 6% and much, much lower. And when you have a prolonged downturn, such as 2002, when you had 3 straight years of negative returns, it can take a very long time for the market to recover to its previous peak. So while it's unlikely your average price will be at that peak point, if you've been drip feeding your money into the market over a few years, you can still wait years for your money to be back in green. Hence why you need to allow sufficient time for markets to recover and keep your money there. And it is of course important to bear in mind that stocks are relatively expensive compared to history, especially in the US, going off their PE ratio. That does not mean they're overpriced or a bad time to purchase, but it does mean that they're more expensive compared to history off that very basic measurement. So for me personally, I'm not comfortable parking my house deposit in the market for just 5 years. I could of course be missing out on quite considerable gains if markets rise, but that is the potential price I'm willing to pay for peace of mind over a potential downturn. This is why it's in a cash account. And that kind of skips ahead to question 4. What funds help you achieve those previous 3 questions, and do you understand the fund and what its purpose is? So if 3 years of studying macroeconomics has taught me anything, it's that economics and economic growth is very complicated, and it can go tits up in a particular country for a number of unexpected and unforeseen reasons. Politics and people make things unpredictable. So this is closely linked to my relatively low risk stance to investing. For my long-term ISA, I don't want to bet on a particular country or sector. That requires too much thought, effort, and it's not something I feel comfortable or skilled enough in doing. And who knows what the world is going to look like in 20, 30 years. Is the US going to underperform the rest of the world? Unlikely, but it's not impossible. Is China going to lead this new world order? I don't think so, but it's not impossible. Predicting where we'll perform well is hard, and predicting an unforeseen shock is by definition nearly impossible. The US stock market could be the next victim of an unexpected economic event with bad consequences for the US stock market. Of course, it seems unlikely sitting where we are today, but it's entirely possible, just as we saw in the dot-com bust in the early 2000s, or with Japan in the 90s, which took 30 years to recover to its previous all-time high. So for this reason, global funds are extremely popular because they provide a cheap one-stop shop to buy into the largest companies around the world based on their value, minimizing our exposure to one particular economy. So while that does minimize that risk, it doesn't completely eliminate it because US stock market is so valuable, and any market cap weighted index will be made up of about 60% of US stocks. So buying an equal weighted market index, you're letting the market decide your allocation. This way, if the rest of the world outperforms the US, the weighting of the rest of the world will slowly increase in line with that increased value. So you may or may not think this is a good idea, but it works for me, and it's something I know that I'll stick to for an extended period of time. And of course, you might be a much better stock picker than me. You might think a particular sector like tech is going to continue to hugely outperform, and adding too much diversification like I've done is a complete waste, and you're missing out on lots of money in the future. or healthcare stocks, for example. There are a number of things that you can do, not just global funds, but that's what I'm comfortable with. And like I said, with my lifetime ISA, that's obviously not in any sort of global fund. I don't want to take on equity risk, so I've simply got that in a cash account. It's not in any sort of market fund, it's just cash account getting a fixed rate of interest. But now we know why we're investing, how long we're doing it for, what we're comfortable with, and how we can achieve those 3 things. Now we're going to have an account to invest through. So what is the most tax efficient strategy for you? So for this question in the UK, it's nearly always going to be an ISA. ISAs, we all love ISAs. ISAs, get an ISA. It's the most overpowered investment account ever. So all gains and dividends are shielded from any sort of tax liability in the future. And the 20k yearly limit is quite generous. And if you're utilizing that over a long period of time, you can build up a significant pot of wealth. And you can use that and draw down from it tax-free. So you can use it for medium-term savings or longer-term savings as a tool for early retirement, as I hope to be doing. So if you're saving for a house deposit though, you can even get an additional benefit in the 25% top up from the government on all deposits through the lifetime ISA, which has a yearly deposit limit of 4,000, which is included in that 20k overall ISA limit. But if you're a higher rate taxpayer, utilising the tax rebate on pensions might be the best method for you if you're wanting a better lifestyle in retirement and have got some of that pension allowance to use up. But essentially what I'm saying is, unless you're investing tens and tens of thousands of pounds each year, then there is nearly always a tax efficient wrapper you can be investing through, and therefore hold on to more of your money and get a better return over time. But if you do want to know more about the differences between ISAs and pensions, then do check out this video above me now, as it will hopefully help you decide which one is better for your circumstances and also the benefits you can get for that. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.